In the words of one of the announcers from Rocky, what started out as a joke has turned out to be a disaster. And boy, do I have a lot of Survivor tribes that fit that description quite well. Internet, there are ticking time bombs, hot messes, oh my gosh, this tribe is so crazy vibe tribes. And then there are disasters. Walking, running, tripping over themselves, what have you. These Survivor tribes can't help but fall apart from the word go.
It is an absolute disaster in the first immunity challenge of Survivor 47. You wanted Survivor, you got Survivor.
In the latest era of this show, as of this video, it's become a recurring trend for a handful of tribes to fall apart out of the gate and be deemed disaster tribes. They lose a lot of challenges, they vote a lot of their players out before the merge or the swap, and they just can't seemingly get it together. The producers have insisted on using 3 starting tribes since season 41, and after several seasons have passed, it's produced a recurring trend that fans are picking up on. And so I began to wonder, is this a symptom of 3 starting tribes, that one is likely to fall apart before the merge? Are these tribes anomalies? Are they rare? How often do disaster tribes emerge when there are 3 starting tribes versus only 2? And what even constitutes a tribe being called a disaster? Where do you draw the line? Well, I've done some of the research, taken some notes. Let's answer these questions. Let's dive deep into the wild history that is the disaster tribes of Survivor. Let's first talk about Survivor seasons with 3 starting tribes and how that all shakes up, as I think it's the most relevant part for where we are today. As of right now, not including the current season that's airing right now, as we haven't seen it all unfold, there are 12 seasons that start with 3 tribes. And only one of them is from the first half of the show's run through 46 complete seasons. From season 1 to season 23, only season 8, All-Stars from 2004, features 3 starting tribes. 22 other seasons have 2 starting tribes. That's kind of wild in and of itself. I would wager there were no disaster tribes on All-Stars, even though we did see Rupert build a shelter in the sand that quickly turned into a watery grave. The first season with 3 starting tribes to feature a disaster tribe was season 25, Philippines, where the blue Mat Sing tribe showed up and basically redefined what it meant to have a rough start out of the gate. These guys lost 4 straight challenges, and not even Oolong from Palau could boast that feat. Mat Sing just kept losing and losing and losing and literally losing, and through their defeats emerged 2 strong players, forged through the fires of tribal council. Malcolm and Denise arose as underdogs and went on to take the season by storm. The 2 of them were separated into the other tribes. They called it a dissolution, and then the 2 of them worked together at the merge to run the table and reach the final 4. Denise went on to win the season after attending every tribal council of the season. The biggest disaster player from a results perspective, and she was invincible. She was a sole survivor. And I think Jeff liked this because in the next cycle, 27 and 28, because they filmed the seasons back to back, we saw another 3 tribe starting season with Cagayan. Cagayan featured a second disaster tribe in the Brains with Garrett and Jatia and the former president of the Miami Marlins, which speaks for itself. We then saw one more disaster tribe before the new era with the Brawn tribe of season 32, Ko Rong. Kinda surprising the Brawns couldn't win challenges given their lineup, especially in the pre-merge where it's so heavily dependent on challenge wins. Before the new era, from season 41 onward, there were only 6 seasons with 3 starting tribes, and only half of them had a disaster tribe. But with the 41st season and onward, 3 starting tribes became the norm, like how 2 starting tribes used to be the norm before it. And yeah, right away, we saw yet another disaster tribe pop up with the green Ua tribe, strategically dominated by Shan and Ricard. This duo finessed the rest of their tribe as they lost 4 of 5 immunity challenges in the first half of the season and were reduced to just 2 players entering the merge. Likewise, neither Shan nor Ricard would go on to win the season, just like the Bronze from 32 or the Brains from 28. Up to this point, Denise was the only winner to emerge since season 25 with 3 starting tribe disasters, and go figure, you started on disaster tribe, you're probably in for a rough time. But That's about to change. Up until recently, Season 42 and 43 didn't really have what I would describe as disaster tribes by my metric. It was in Season 44 that we saw our 5th disaster tribe emerge with the Purple Tikas. Carson, Carolyn, and Jam Jam became a Malcolm and Denise trio who managed to accomplish a similar feat. All 3 of them reached the Final Four after losing 3 members in the pre-merge, and Jam Jam went on to win the season. Finally, another disaster tribe has produced a winner. Season 45 had the Yellow Lulu tribe that also gave off Malcolm and Denise vibes with Caleb and Emily, but neither of them made it to the endgame. And then we got 46 with the Purple Yanu tribe with Kenzie, Tiffany, and Q. Way more dysfunctional than the Tikas before them, the Yanu trio fractured quickly at the merge and began to play their own games, resulting in a victory for mermaid dragons around the world. So, just to take stock of the 3 tribe seasons up to this current status where we are in the show, 7 disaster tribes are here, 3 of them had winners. That's actually not too shabby given where they all began. These are supposed to be disaster tribes, right? Like half of them are winning. I think there's something to being the underdog when the merge hits that allows these players to lay low and find bouts of success. 7 years ago, I talked about the intentional Matt Singh strategy related to Denise and how Matt Singh produced a winner from a disaster tribe before quote unquote disaster tribes were really even a thing. I don't think anybody is actually really doing that strategy, intentionally losing to reduce their threat level, but even then, these players' threat levels do inherently get reduced when they have a smaller target on their backs due to having less power halfway into the season. And with the latest era of the show mimicking the format of the season that Denise won, perhaps it's not as much of a surprise to see 33% of the seasons from 41 to 46 produce winners from tribes not too dissimilar to Matt Singh. But here's the thing. I don't think that these disaster tribes are inherently a bad thing, or that they are a direct symptom of 3 starting tribes. Sometimes players just don't work well together, particularly in challenges. Sometimes momentum carries winning tribes, and one good player is all it takes to stay immune. And these disaster tribes just didn't have that one player. And when I take a look at just 3 tribe seasons, we're only accounting for 12 of 46 total seasons. That's basically a quarter of the show. What about the other 75%? The bulk of it? Well, as it turns out, there are a lot of disaster tribes on 2 starting tribe seasons too. 13 tribes to be exact, which means 13 of the 34 seasons with 2 starting tribes feature disaster tribes. Around 40%, whereas of the 12 3-tribe seasons, 7 of them have disasters, about 60%. So a 20% increase when you have a 3rd tribe, which probably makes sense. There's a 3rd tribe to account for. The first ever disaster tribe in Survivor history is from Season 4, Marquesas, and it's Maramu. Go figure, it's that tribe where Boston Rob first played Survivor and commandeered it after he ousted the original leader, Hunter. What do you know, Boston Rob leads a tribe, turns into a disaster. Or was it already one? But guess what? The winner of the season, V, was from Maramu, meaning the first ever disaster tribe in Survivor history produced a winner. We've also got some other amusing disaster tribes to mention, such as Morgan from Season 7 Pearl Islands, Oolong from Season 10 Palau, Ravu from Season 14 Fiji, and Jeonhu from Season 15 China. Oolong is notorious for being the it girl disaster tribe. Oolong lost every one of their members in the pre-merge except for one, to the point where the tribes didn't even merge at the halfway point, the only season where they didn't, because Oolong just didn't exist anymore. They went the way of the dodo. Stephanie just joined Koror. And she didn't win either, and she was directly targeted largely because her story was way too good to overlook. You can't just let an underdog of her proportion waltz to the end, you have to give her the money. Ravu on Season 14 Fiji is the losingest tribe in Survivor history. Not only are they a disaster, but they lose the most challenges of any tribe, including rewards. And even when they won an immunity challenge, it was actually because the other tribe decided to give it to Ravu in a twist to keep their luxurious camp. It was basically a participation trophy. They didn't even win the challenge. I think it should also be mentioned though that Ravu were the have-nots tribe in a season-defining twist, pitting haves versus have-nots. And yeah, they really didn't have it. And then we get to one of the biggest train wreck disaster tribes of all time with Fong from Season 17 Gabon. Fong is notorious not just for being a disaster, but for also being a train wreck, like an evolved form of a disaster 2.0. And what's more about all of these tribes that I just mentioned, none of them produce a winner. They were disasters to the core, and they all lost. And then things turned around for a minute. Season 18 and 19 both had disaster tribes with Jalapao and Foa, and we saw JT and Natalie both go on to win back-to-back. Suddenly these disasters were less chaotic hot messes to be pitied, and more so valiant underdogs beating against the tides of fate to emerge victorious. It's all in the framing. JT was an underdog from a disaster tribe who kept losing and losing, and then turned that into one of the best social wins we had ever seen. Meanwhile, Natalie worked alongside her foursome to overthrow the dominant Galoo tribe despite being down 4-8 at the merge. And then after season 19 with Natalie, we did not see another disaster tribe on a 2-tribe season for 7 more seasons. Denise popped up with season 25 and the 3 starting tribes, but otherwise, disaster tribes were kind of a dying breed for a minute. I mean, we did have season 24 One World, where somehow both tribes were narratively framed as being disasters, both the men and the women. The women fell behind early on and were talked about being pathetic and disorganized. Meanwhile, the men literally gave up immunity for the sake of it, all of them just fighting over a single brain cell. But I also don't think they really fit my definition, where a tribe loses repeatedly compared to their opposition. We saw the second Fans vs. Favorites tribe season 26, have a disaster tribe with the Fans, who were only half fans, mind you. Half of them were recruited to be on the show. Disaster of a casting job. The Tadhana tribe on season 27 Blood vs. Water were basically the +1 tribe to the returning players. They fell apart and repeatedly lost and became a disaster by all accounts. Thankfully for them, they had a bunch of returning player loved ones to save their butts at the merge. And in the second Blood vs. Water with season 29 San Juan del Sur, we saw the Orange Coyopa tribe lose 3 straight out of the gate and then another at the swap. Not to mention they only got their first win when the other tribe threw the 4th challenge. Thanks, Drew Christie. A win is a win, but I don't really consider that a point in the direction of them being any less of a disaster. And so we then jump ahead to season 36, Ghost Island. The Orange Malolo tribe suffered the lowest of lows when they kept getting lower in numbers in the pre-merge. This season was dominated by tribe factions, and Malolo had a narrative curse all season that resulted in none of them winning. And again, for a while in Survivor, disaster tribes, regardless of how many tribes started this season, were all losers. We had JT, we had Natalie, we had Denise, and that was it. If you were on a starting disaster tribe otherwise, you were screwed. And really, the only disaster tribe left I haven't mentioned is one of the screwiest of them all. From season 38, Edge of Extinction, we saw the Blue Manu tribe absolutely fall apart in the pre-merge over and over. As entertaining of a tribe as they were, debatably top 5, they lost the first 3 challenges, going from 9 to 6 players in a flash. Then proceeded to swap, where 5 of their 6 members stayed on Manu. Well, basically in name only, and then they lost again. And their swapped player, Wendy, was also voted out in the pre-merge 2 episodes later. The funny thing about the Manu tribe is that despite being one of the biggest disasters ever, there was this little twist on this season called the Edge of Extinction. You may have missed it if you weren't paying attention, where 2 voted out players could return to the game. Yeah, 2 Manu players returned, Rick and Chris, and they both reached the final 4, and Chris won the season. So you can kind of see my dilemma here. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that in relation to every other season we've talked about. It's kind of an asterisk. But hey, finally, after so long, a disaster tribe produced a winner. It just took like an absolute disaster of a season to make it happen. Chris Underwood is really the people's champion. And then we get to the latest era, which I've already covered. That is the wild history of disaster tribes in Survivor. But what can we take from it? What does this all mean? Well, let's break it down. According to my calculations, there have been 108 tribes in all of Survivor from Season 1 to 46. 20 of them are disaster tribes, a little less than 20% total. Only 8 disaster tribes emerged in the first half of the show's run, which is about 16% of the total tribes in that span. Meanwhile, 12 are in the second half, with 57 total tribes, a 5% increase. But there are also more tribes to account for too. 8 winners have emerged from the ashes of a disaster tribe, and with 20 total disasters overall, that's not too shabby. And when you account for the fact that disaster tribes are 20% of the overall tribes in the show's run, I think that's a decent number. It means being an underdog can yield good results. And we're talking major underdogs, disastrous underdogs. These aren't just your average run-of-the-mill underdogs here. I also looked at how gender might play into it for those who survive their disaster tribe. Are they more often men or women? With 3 starting tribes, it's evenly split with 9 men and 9 women making the merge. The only exception is Sean from season 45, who, he asked to be voted out during the swap. He technically survived the disaster tribe only to continue their legacy by basically quitting the game. With 2 starting tribe seasons, there are often swaps to account for, which means many players can survive that initial onslaught of losses, but then still get voted out before the merge. Overall, including swaps, 37 men and 23 women have survived disaster tribes on 2 tribe seasons and made the merge. Lil the Scoutmaster, Chris Underwood, and Rick Devens are kind of wonky to consider with their twists, but whatever. This overall created a 62 to 38% imbalance between men and women, meaning 3 tribe disasters so far appear a bit more balanced when men and women are taken into account. Men survive the pre-merge more often in the wake of a disaster tribe, but then it is nice to recognize that of the 8 disaster tribe winners, half of them are men and half are women. And I think that's where I'm at right now after talking about all these numbers and all this stats and all this stuff. A disaster tribe isn't the death knell that you might think it is, assuming you can survive it anyway. Survivorship bias is something to consider because with every player who survives and potentially wins, there are a lot of players who don't even survive the initial disaster. I mean, that's what makes them disasters. 3 starting tribe seasons have a higher likelihood of producing them, which I think contributes to any fatigue the audience might experience when witnessing such disasters over and over, particularly in relation to the latest era.
I'm mad at him. If this is what you wanted, if you wanted to end my story so soon, you shouldn't have put me on Survivor in the first place.
2 tribe seasons don't have this happen as often, especially with a swap where the tribes are rebalanced, and perhaps it's that balance that often creates better results. Do we need to see tribes suffer due to the 3 starting tribe format for 3 straight seasons? Maybe 4. Can the show not be designed with 2 in mind? Why not switch it up? Like always, variety is the spice of life. It's likely a reason why 3 starting tribes became a trend starting with season 25, and maybe it's time we take a look at the hard data before us and realize it's probably time to spice things up with the initial format. But that's just me, and this is just the wild history of disaster tribes in Survivor. It's long, it goes way back, and it is definitely going to continue as long as Survivor is still around, no matter the format. Let me know what you think about all this and how you feel about disaster tribes overall. Love them, hate them, want to see more of them or less of them, or do you just want to see people succeed more, be competent, be inspirations, or be laughing stocks? Maybe a little bit of everything. A big thank you to my patrons for all your support in these catastrophically trying times. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to brace yourselves and hold on tight for the merge on your way out. And I will see you in the next one. Once I hit the beach on day 1, take a look around and ask myself, am I on the disaster tribe? Nah.
The Brain Tribe was a disaster.
How did we come up with the criteria for brains? I'd like to see that data.
After only 6 days, the Red Tribe was starting to look like one of the worst tribes in Survivor history.
This tribe is hopeless. They're idiots.
Matt Singh was the only tribe to perfect the art of failure. Matt Singh, winless! They'd lost 3 challenges in a row.
1 win is all it's gonna take to know we're not just destined for annihilation.
Wow! What a plan, man. It's not about the $1 million. All I want to do is win 1 million hearts.
The tribe has spoken.